Hello, Delta SIGs, and welcome to Digital Risk Management. This discussion is going to cover risk management both traditionally and in our new virtual age. My name is Eddie Stevens, and I am a Delta Sigma Pi initiated into the Beta Omega chapter at University of Miami back in 1991. I've gone on to become an attorney, and 27 years later, I am one of 8 owners of a pretty big law firm here in Palm Beach County called Ward Damon. And I've had the opportunity also to continue to serve the fraternity. I have enjoyed being a regional vice president, serving on the board of directors, serving as a trustee, and ultimately president and chair of the Leadership Foundation during our centennial years. As an attorney and a brother, I think I have a unique perspective on some of these issues, and hopefully I can bring about a better understanding as to why the risk management policy exists and its relationship to our insurance policy and the coverage that it provides. First of all, this is our first lead we have done in a virtual world due to the pandemic. As a brother, I hope you're doing okay. And if you're not, know that there are resources. You can probably get free counseling through your school. If not, check out NAMI online. We are experiencing a stressful time that we have never dealt with in my lifetime. If you're having some issues coping with this new stress, please reach out. In our society, we've created a stigma around mental illness. When we break an arm, it's obvious we go to the doctor and it gets fixed. But not everybody goes and seeks help when they're under stress and needs to. So check out the resources available to through your school. If not, I encourage you to look at things like NAMI.org on the website and see what resources may be available. Now let's talk about the nitty-gritty of the Delta Sigma Pi risk management policy. You can always find the most recent version of it on the internet. And the most recent version for us has been updated in August 2020. So you do want to make sure you're looking at the most recent version. It applies to all organizational members of the fraternity and applies during all fraternity events. So you have to kind of understand what an organizational member is and what is a fraternity event. An organizational member for the purposes of this policy is any faculty member, college or alumni, pledges, colony members, employees. All of this category of people are categorized as organizational members as for the purposes of this policy. A lot of people ask why we have such a strict risk management policy, or why there are so many behaviors codified. And real simple reason, there is a direct relationship. If you are abiding by these rules, you're covered by our insurance policy. And if some unfortunate accident happens where we either lose human life, property, or there are other damages, you are covered by our policy. Every chapter pays a premium every year to our umbrella liability insurance policy. That amount is a reasonable amount. And if you compare it to, for example, what a social fraternity that has a house pays, we pay per chapter what most social fraternities pay per member. So if you follow the risk management policy, you're going to have the legal protection of the insurance, meaning insurance covers any of those issues. If you are not following those, if you are not following a risk management policy, well, you're going to be on your own. And I didn't really appreciate this concept when I was a student, because I thought I was invincible and I didn't really have much stuff to protect. But now 25 years later, I have accumulated some wealth, and I can understand how a judgment against me could be pretty devastating. So the risk management policy is designed to keep you out of trouble, and if some misfortune occurs, make sure you're covered. And if we are not following these rules, you don't have that protection, you don't have that coverage. So alcohol and beverages, there's really the two main things to consider are how to, if you are a collegiate chapter, how you can have alcohol served two ways, a BYOB type system, or the more preferred way is to have a licensed and insured third party vendor, like a bartender, someone with their own someone with their own insurance policy, where if God forbid something happens, it's their insurance policy that's paying out. Also, that way you have a professional that is assuming that liability. Some basic things to understand: you cannot buy alcoholic beverages with chapter funds. You cannot have common alcohol. You cannot a chapter cannot co-sponsor an event with another organization that involves alcohol. You cannot, if there is alcohol, attendance must be by invitation only. Plus, you cannot have drinking games or basically do anything that coerces, glorifies, or encourages the participation in activities involving rapid consumption of alcohol. What is a fraternity event, and when does the risk management policy apply? There's no hardcore definition of what a fraternity event is. And when it comes down to it, it's a question of coverage. You have insurance coverage at fraternity events. If an insurance cover denies a claim, we're going to end up fighting what a fraternity event means in a court of law in front of a bunch of jurors. So if you had something on the calendar of events, if you talked about it and if you discussed it in some type of a social media forum dedicated to Delta Sigma Pi, if brothers are wearing letters, these are all factors that could be presented to a jury to determine whether or not it is actually a fraternity event. When I was a member, we did not have a risk management policy. We just had a statement of hazing. So back in 2012, it got real serious because there was an incident at Florida A&M University, not involving a fraternity, but involving the band, where a member, Robert Champion, died. And it sounds like he was beaten to death in the bus. He was a flutist. And the big change here with this particular case is the prosecutors threatened to put criminal charges on the school administrators. And they also charged everybody involved in the incident. That was a big wake-up call to not only the administrators at Florida A&M, but university administrators everywhere. Because of that incident, so fraternal Greek life was shut down at Florida A&M, and now you'll see these patterns wherever there's a death, Greek life gets shut down for a while at a school. And then 2017, we had an incident at Penn State at a fraternity where someone passed away, and afterwards we found out that he had drinking large quantities of alcohol, fell down the stairs, and they didn't report his death for about 12 hours. Right there, it took them 12 hours to call 911. Search warrants showed that other members Googled terms like, what do you do when lips turn blue? A couple of people went to jail. And this was a pretty big one across the country, caused all of Greek life to shut down at Penn State for a while. Also now there are much more stricter uh, criminal laws because of this particular incident. We're still having We are still having incidences. This is an article from last year where a student from the University of Buffalo died in an alcohol-related incident. And they suspect hazing. And again, after this happened, all of Greek life was shut down at the school. So we know hazing still exists. We see it in the headlines, and unfortunately, it still exists in Delta Sigma Pi because you see chapters are still being disciplined for hazing issues and violating risk management. So hazing is the intentional, knowing, or reckless act committed by any person, whether individually or in concert with other persons, against an individual or individuals. It is coerced. It is basically making the person who is receiving it in a subjective manner, whether or not they feel uncomfortable, threatened. The heavy issues are coerced forcing of food, liquid, alcohol, drugs. There could be physical brutality. We had a couple of deaths in the past 10 years just due to heavy trauma. But most of these deaths and serious issues were related to alcohol. And hazing is not allowed by the fraternity. Most schools have hazing codified as prohibited, and more states are making it a criminal action to haze. And if a state does not have hazing as a criminal action, they certainly have something that they could charge you with based on the behavior, depending on, what happens. So you have potential penalties in all three areas. If you have a school violation, typically you lose all of your school funding. Usually you lose all student aid. And if you're relying on any financial aid whatsoever to fund your school, they take it away. So it is all of our hazing is just something that has gotten out of hand, caused too many deaths. And it's something that if, God forbid, something goes wrong at one of our events and it's hazing related, it's going to damage much more than just that chapter. It's going to damage the entire organization. Delta Sigma Pi has a discrimination policy. We do not allow discrimination or harassment against folks for their race, their ethnic creed, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, marital status, national origin, age, disability, veteran status. We don't allow it. We don't allow assault and battery. Cannot beat up people. Sexual misconduct. It's a sexual harassment policy that is very similar to one you would find where you go to work in your employment handbook. No weapons, firearms, or explosives are allowed at Delta Sigma Pi events. Chapter houses and meeting facilities. You don't really have to deal with this anymore because they're all prohibited. There's a retaliation policy, which is really an anti-retaliation policy. And the fact that this is all available on the fraternity website. Yay. Delta Sigma Pi also has an individual code of conduct, which is worth understanding. when you go to any national or regional or provincial event, you agree to this code. We treat all people and property with care and respect. We don't lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those actions by others. We treat others equally with impartiality and respect, exercise appropriate oversight for fraternity and chapter and colony property, follow all rules, state laws, responsible for the actions of themselves and their guests. And of course, there's the number 7 of the code of conduct, where you agree to use copyrighted or trademarked materials or information of the fraternity in a respectful manner, and will do nothing physically or online to disparage the brand of the fraternity. Now you are refreshed with your obligations as a brother. Due to this pandemic, we have been thrusted into a digital platform. I am a trial attorney, and I have not been in court since March of this year. Instead, I have been in a little Zoom box talking to judges. So I have done my best to adapt my presentation, while I would much prefer being in a courtroom, looking at a judge, giving a persuasive argument. I've done my best to adapt to the circumstances. As you can see, I've turned my office into a little recording studio, and I'm doing my best to try to create the most persuasive presentation I can, just because things are different. A lot of people are depressed and down because of this pandemic. I believe that there are opportunities that you can use to adapt and overcome, and those people that will succeed will find those items and exploit them. And like Darwin said, it really is survival of the fittest. So let's talk about a couple of digital concerns. Whenever you use a social media app, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, there's terms of service that you're agreeing to. And while most people don't understand this, you're agreeing that they have a license to use your material and your content. And they also have the license to sub-license your material and content. So they can basically make money off of whatever you post. They can turn it into an ad. They can use it for pretty much you're giving them implicit permission to use it for pretty much anything. The companies are run by foreign countries. That can be pretty scary. Also, legally, it has been determined that you do not have a right of privacy on social media, regardless of your privacy settings. And this is a really important legal precedent, because it means whatever you post on social media can be basically used by anyone for any reason. You don't own it anymore. And by posting it, you acknowledge that you do not have a right of privacy. And this is true regardless if you send something in a private message, whether the privacy setting is restricted. And in the past, in civil or criminal litigation, where attorneys try to obtain this information by subpoena, in the past, people objected. But now it's pretty much clear across the board that whatever you post is fair game. And whatever you post online stays there forever, even if you delete it immediately. There are all kinds of archival websites that stores your information, because your content and information has become a form of currency. And the more content you post, the more you're giving it away. You are also responsible for the words you say online. But for example, if you call someone a liar, and that's not true, you just committed a civil tort known as slander or libel. So keep in mind, words have consequences. Most content you post, you lose control of, and other people can exploit it for money. Be smart. and use common sense. Now we're going to open this up for some questions and answers. Proud to be a Delta Sig.